This is the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to the Zeta Report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month. Zeta Report is we're here with Nancy from ZetaTalk.com. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm good because we're going to deal with such an exciting subject, the New Madrid, past, present, and future, and how the establishment lately, the U.S. government, has got their finger on the pulse. You know, as you can tell from various news articles and activities, and we're going to go through it all. But before I get too far, I want to quote our usual disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes, and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit ZetaTalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. In 1811 and 1812, the U.S. endured a series of massive quakes in the New Madrid region. The New Madrid quakes rang church bells in Boston and destabilized buildings in Savannah and Charleston. The Mississippi River ran backwards due to heaving ground. Quoting geology trails. Shortly after 2 o'clock on the morning of December 16, 1811, the Mississippi River Valley was convulsed in an earthquake so severe that it awakened people in cities as distant as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Norfolk, Virginia. The scene was one of devastation in an area that is now the southeast part of Missouri, the northeast part of Arkansas, the southwest part of Kentucky, and the northwest part of Tennessee. The Mississippi Valley earthquakes of 1811 to 1812 rank as some of the largest in the United States since its settlement by Europeans. The area of strong shaking associated with these shocks is 2 to 3 times larger than that of the 1964 Alaska earthquakes and 10 times larger than that of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. We will soon find out why that is, liquefaction. What makes the New Madrid fault so fearsome? Historically, the 1811 to 1812 quakes were not that large, estimated to be magnitude 7.3 to 8, but the devastating effect was felt for miles due to liquefaction. Not just the jolt, but the jiggling for a long, long time, turning the ground into a type of quicksand. Discussions on the pending New Madrid quake tend to focus on the New Madrid area, so this is where the worst quake damage occurred during the 1811 to 1812 quakes. And as can be seen by comparing recent quakes since 1974 to the recent quake clusters, they form a similar pattern. Most quake reporting focuses on big Richter or magnitude quakes, but look at the 2013 pattern that the small quakes along the region affected by the New Madrid fault line form. There it is, where the New Madrid liquefaction occurred and up along the fault line as it heads toward the New England states. Why does North America have this fault line in the middle of the plate? A quick look at the shape of North America plate shows the region. North America is a flat top with a straight line running from Russia's far east through the Arctic to Iceland. It cannot roll. Thus, as the Atlantic pulls apart, the North American continent is put into a diagonal stress. The New Madrid Fault runs up toward Chicago, then turns and runs under the St. Lawrence Seaway all the way to New England. It also connects the Alabama region to the East Coast fault line, running up along the Atlantic coastline to the New England states. Thus, during the 1811 to 1812 quakes, church bells rang in Boston. The East Coast is affected the most because of what the Zetas have called a bow stress, where Alaska is pulled toward the tip of Mexico, like a bow about to release an arrow. This creates a stretch in the East Coast, causing factories to explode and gas and water mains to rupture. Many of these effects run along a line from San Diego to Pennsylvania, the center of the bow. Collapsed bridges above Anchorage during a magnitude 7 in late November 2018 show this stress. Remarkably, buildings in Anchorage were relatively unaffected by the quake, with only some contents tossed around, but the roadways were ripped asunder. For the Zetas, this was due to rock layers being pulled apart, not the normal jolt of a quake. This is typical in a stretch zone. Quoting Yahoo News, those caught in the trembler described ferocious shaking that just didn't stop. The tightening bow is breaking rocks, producing booms across the North American plate, and opened up huge cracks in the ground in the American Southwest and Mexico. In 2017, Mexico quakes near New Mexico City were felt in Valdosta, 7,046 miles away, a huge reach. The American bow is not just a local affair. The Ramapo Fault in New Jersey has spewed carbon monoxide twice recently, once in 2017 and again in June of 2019. Where the Ramapo connects to the East Coast fault line, which connects to the New Madrid fault line, this carbon monoxide is undoubtedly due to the bowing stress, as New Jersey is in the center of the bow. Quoting Hal Turner radio show, vast quantities of carbon monoxide gas are spewing out of the ground into the atmosphere. These vast emissions of CO gas indicate the ground is moving, crushing hydrocarbons, vaporizing them, and then the CO gas is being squeezed by all of that pressure out. The rock strata has much to do with why the New Madrid does such damage to the Mississippi region and parts east. The unzipping of the New Madrid fault line along the lower Mississippi River hesitates when it reaches the Great Lakes, and then proceeds along the New Madrid fault line as it runs below the Great Lakes. This follows a path running along the border between different rock types, a weak point allowing them to rip apart. The effect of rock strata on resistance or weakness was shown during the September 3, 2016 Oklahoma magnitude 5.6 earthquake. This quake caused the ground to rock over a 1,255-mile swath from North Dakota to Houston, a vertical line that avoided the New Madrid region and East Coast. This actually computes to a magnitude 9.5 due to distance. Compare this to the 1906 quake in Northern California, which was deemed a magnitude 7.8 and destroyed 80% of the infrastructure of San Francisco. That quake was only felt as far away as Nevada. Quoting Big Story, record-tying Oklahoma earthquake felt as far away as Arizona. People in Kansas City and St. Louis, Chicago, Arizona, Arkansas, Des Moines, Memphis, and Big Lake in the southwest part of Texas all reported feeling the earthquake. Dallas TV station WFAA tweeted that the quake shook its studios. Now, mind you, this has to be from dumbing down by the USGS. They said 7.8 and it was 9.5. Why can't they say that? We're not getting the truth on earthquakes lately at all. Why Oklahoma? It is soft land to the west of the Mississippi River. The quake swarms are exponential, quoting CO in 2015. The total number of 3.0 quakes for 2015 has already surpassed 2014, with 10 weeks left in the year. There have been a total of 2,333 quakes this year, but most of them are less than a magnitude 3. So other than earthquake patterns, do we have any indication that the New Madrid is heating up? How about heaving in the Mississippi riverbed near Memphis? During the 1812 New Madrid earthquake, the Mississippi River ran backwards for a time due to heaving in the riverbed near the New Madrid. This was recorded by many who described the retrograde rush of water as swift, the speed of a racehorse. Waterfalls were formed where the ground had been thrust up, but soon were worn down by the flow of water to allow barges on the river to proceed again. The violent upthrust created the blockage that formed the Real Foot Lake. Now heaving in the Mississippi River is occurring again. This was noted by September 29th and October 1st, 2017 on YouTube videos showing that extraordinarily low level of the river at Memphis. This was per U.S. Army Corps of Engineers river gauges. All manner of speculation ensued. A quick check on the water level upstream at St. Louis and a bit further north at Hamilton show the water merely backed up. St. Louis had a 15-foot level, and further upstream at Hamilton, there was 11-foot level. But Memphis stood at -5. Sounds like constipation to me. In the opinion of the Zetas, the North American continent will adjust with a series of magnitude 6 to 8 quakes, and then the big one will hit. The West Coast will follow with its adjustment. Quoting Zeta Talk, there is pressure along the West Coast, of course. This will only result in the predictable volcanic increases and West Coast earthquakes. But the primary drama precedes the pole shift and will be a ripping action that a plate unable to move must endure. The notable area of catastrophe during this is the eastern half of the continent, U.S. From Houston to Chicago to New England, the diagonal pull will tear the underpinning of cities, and it ain't going to be mild. We continue. Are the cities in the Midwest and eastern half of the U.S. prepared for this shaking and jolting? California builds with earthquakes in mind, retrofitting their homes and buildings, but not the complacent East. During the New Madrid quakes of 1811 to 1812, the New Madrid region was not heavily populated. There is little reference material on the quake damage that would be done, and since the last New Madrid in 1811 to 1812, there simply hasn't been any damage. Complacency has set in, but there are estimates of potential damage. It's not good. 750,000 buildings damaged, most in Tennessee and Arkansas. Almost 4,000 bridges damaged. $300 billion in cost. Are there more signs that the New Madrid adjustment is starting? In the opinion of the Zetas in 2010, there would be a series of quakes, building to a final large jolt that would rip bridges crossing the Mississippi. The snapping bridge on I-35 at the headwaters of the Mississippi in 2007 was an example of what can be expected. Per a video cam on the eastern side of the bridge jumped 50 feet to the side as it gave way. It was under a torque, and bridges are not built to withstand torque pressure. Why would the Mississippi River bridges rip? In the opinion of the Zetas, it would be the Mississippi unzipping, dropping the land just to the west of the Mississippi River into a lower elevation for a swath 50 miles wide. The New Madrid unzips along rock strata, with the stronger rock to the east of the Mississippi holding, while the softer rock to the west is pulled down. This will effectively tear the bridges crossing the Mississippi, destroying not only surface traffic, but also oil and gas distribution from the Gulf Coast refineries. Petrol fuel in the U.S. is moved from the refineries near Houston and the Gulf to the populous East Coast via pipelines that cross the Mississippi. When the Mississippi bridges snap, these fuel lines will snap, spilling their contents. Are there signs of the bull stress? The growing Louisiana sinkhole at the Bayou Corne started in September 2012 and is located at the very end of the New Madrid fault line as it travels along the path of the Mississippi. Note this is also in the land just to the west of the Mississippi, predicted by the Zetas to sink as the New Madrid rips. Another sign of bull stress in the North American continent is along the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is pulled apart as the bow tightens. Along the length of the St. Lawrence, there have been signs, booms down through Wisconsin, a crevasse on the Michigan Peninsula, and a persistent hum near Detroit. Lately, that Windsor hum is back with a vengeance. Per the Zetas during the last weeks, when rock stress will be everywhere in the days leading up to the pole shift, this moaning earth will be a big problem. Quoting, and in the opinion of the Zetas, indeed, tearing of the St. Lawrence Seaway will occur during the New Madrid adjustment because the lurch of Mexico to the west actually intensifies the bowing of the North American continent. The Seaway tears open. This is actually various adjustments at weak points along the Seaway rather than the tearing apart into a larger inland bay that occurs during the pole shift itself. Niagara Falls will remain, but some of the inland locks will break. End of the quote. The Liquifaction Bridge in central Wisconsin suddenly began to dip, forcing police to close off the span that it carries Interstate 43 over the Fox River, some 120 feet below. Quoting the Daily Mail, a 400-foot section of a bridge in Wisconsin has been closed after a motorist noticed the bridge was beginning to sag. It appears the dip was caused by one of the pillars that holds up the bridge. The pillar sank around 2 feet into the ground. The bridge, which carries 40,000 cars a day, will be closed indefinitely, quoting and in the opinion of the Zetas. Wisconsin has clearly torn in this region in the past. We warned over a decade ago that Wisconsin would participate in widening of the Seaway, and the Green Bay hum, which appeared in 2008, was a clear warning that the rock stress had started. Wisconsin is ripping open along a line that follows the peninsula down along the Fox River toward Madison, and pulled rock evident in the small lakes along that line. End of the quote. In February 2019, moaning was heard in a suburb of Chicago along the canals dug to connect with the Mississippi River. But the moaning was most ominous due to a Zeta Talk warning about a rupture along the deep canal conduit beneath Chicago. They warned this would rupture during the New Madrid adjustment, bringing a horror to Chicago, allowing the water in Lake Michigan to flow under Chicago, a man-made disaster never intended by those who dug the canals, which now run past a town of Justice along the riverbed. Quoting and in the opinion of the Zetas, as the New Madrid fault line runs along the Seaway just under the Great Lakes in Ohio, cities such as Cleveland and Toledo will find their infrastructure greatly shattered in places as the rock beneath them will jut and drop, vertical adjustments. Buffalo, being virtually on the fault line, will likewise be shattered in this way, such that freeways become useless, but the Seaway at Niagara Falls will remain. End of the quote. One of the Zeta Talk predictions is a European tsunami, a result of the final New Madrid adjustment, the Big Rip. This would shift the North American continent to the extent that North American plate would tear in the central Atlantic, creating a void that would fill with ocean waters that would rebound toward Europe. It's a big deal. The New Madrid adjustment is thus a small, multi-step process, and per the Zetas will bring incrementally larger earthquakes along the fault line before the big one that will finally ease the tension of the diagonal tugging and the bowing of the North American continent. It is then that a secondary adjustment along the San Andreas will begin in earnest. Is FEMA privy to some information that the New Madrid and associated fault lines are about to snap? For some reason, regularly scheduled retraining of the civilian corps was moved up 2 years, from June 2018 to June 2016. For the Zetas, only the restless New Madrid would account for this. And where is this retraining to occur? In Atlanta, where FEMA Region 4 is centered. The New Madrid just to the left, the East Coast fault line just to the right. And significantly, the 2019 FEMA exercise, dubbed Shaken Fury, is taking place at Memphis. Quoting WKMS, communities in the New Madrid seismic zone are conducting an exercise to prepare for a sudden massive earthquake. The scenario involves a no-notice, 7.7 magnitude, at the southern end of the fault line near Memphis, Tennessee. End of the quote. Following the recent California quakes, Illinois Emergency Management reminded its populace of steps it should be taking for such a no-notice quake. Quoting Fox 2 Now. Strapping water heaters and large appliances to wall studs, anchoring overhead light fixtures, fastening shelves to wall studs and securing cabinet doors with latches, strapping TVs, computers, and other heavy equipment to prevent tipping. Learn how to shut off gas, water, and electricity in case the lines are damaged. Oh, good advice. But wait, there's more. Suddenly there are signs the Trump administration is to vacate D.C. Is the Trump administration aware of a major New Madrid adjustment pending? A major Atlantic tsunami would surely wash against D.C. also. The history of Washington, D.C. is that it was built on a swamp which was drained so that the White House could be constructed there. Old Foggy Bottom was its name. It's all lowland, right on the coast. As is known, the federal government has gradually been moving its headquarters to Denver, which is known as the Mile High City, definitely safe from flooding. The Bureau of Land Management and the U.S. Department of Agriculture will be leaving D.C. Many workers are predicted to quit or retire rather than leave D.C. Quoting Yahoo News, the administration is moving offices at two of the government's largest agencies, the Department of Agriculture and Department of Interior, hundreds of miles across the country. The administration announced this week that the Bureau of Land Management, which oversees public lands and issues permits for oil and gas drilling, would relocate the majority of its D.C.-based employees to offices around the country. End of the quote. What about those Army helicopters on a classified training op in D.C.? Quoting, and in the opinion of the Zetas, more than a tsunami roaring toward Europe will occur, of course, as the water rebounds out of the Atlantic void and likewise rolls toward the east coast of the U.S. Washington, D.C. is lowland, originally built on a drained swamp. The U.S. has steadily moved federal headquarters to their western White House in Denver. But in the event of a sudden tsunami flooding D.C., classified federal records will be relocated to higher ground and stranded workers rescued. D.C. will be abandoned. End of the quote from the Zetas. But wait, aren't we supposed to have a series of small quakes starting at the mouth of the Mississippi, where it empties into the Gulf and works up to the big one? In the opinion of, and quoting the Zetas, where in 2010 we described this as being a series of steps, relatively minor quakes at first and then the big one, due to the Council of World's decision to install humming boxes in 2011, to soften plate movement, the New Madrid is likely to skip the little minor quakes. End of the quote. Is the Trump administration worried? They are giving lots of signs that they are, not just the FEMA Savage Fury exercise. This past month in August, NASA sent a DC-8 surveillance plane zigzagging several hundred miles up the San Andreas of Palmdale. The claim was that they were sniffing smoke from fires, but there hadn't been any fires lately. But why no surveillance of the New Madrid? For the Zetas, the southern part will get unzipped first, but it cannot be monitored because where the Mississippi empties into the Gulf, the fault line lies under mud. Oh, what's this? The Southern Command has employed surveillance balloons to fly over the states to the west and north of the New Madrid fault line, released in South Dakota and flying over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri. These regions had already had signs of New Madrid stress, from the I-35 bridge drop to the booms in central Wisconsin, to booms in Justice along the Chicago canals. Sinking of land will occur just west of the Mississippi, too. Taking a baseline, this region can be rechecked to look for changes, the only early warning the Southern Command might get. Are we about to have a New Madrid emergency? The Illinois Emergency Management thinks so. They put out a strong warning on July 11, 2019, to Illinois residents. Just after Southern California had a Mag 7, they didn't bother to explain why they were frantic to connect the dots. Quoting Fox 3 Now, how can you prevent property damage? The Illinois Emergency Management Agency has a few tips for you. Strapping water heaters and larger appliances to wall studs, anchoring overhead light fixtures to wall studs, and securing cabinet doors with latches. Strapping TVs, computers, and other heavy equipment to prevent tipping. Learn how to shut off gas, water, and electricity in case lines are damaged. Oh, did we mention that a month or so ago? Well, we're telling you again because it's coming. And that's the end of my prepared notes, folks. You know, there's no question, if you live in the New Madrid fault zone, down there where the mud is preventing any kind of monitoring, and just look at the cities that have been built up since 1811, 1812. You know, none of them are retrofitted for earthquakes. Brick is the worst. It'll all fall. All the fascia will fall. They won't support. You know, the chimneys, boop, boop, gone. You know, so the cities are going to be a death trap, but you'll have no warning. I don't know what to do. Move out, live in a tent on high ground. You'll be all set for the pole shift. Get chickens and goats. You know, there's a lot of very high protein veggies. Corn and amaranth together makes the equivalent of raw meat. Duckweed, that light green whatever on ponds, that's protein and it's very nutritious. All this stuff is waiting for you. All you have to go is get started. If you don't want to eat bugs, have chickens and they can eat the bugs and give you eggs and chicken meat. And goat milk is just as good as cow milk. Goats will follow you anywhere. They don't need to be herded. Their poo-poo is little pellets, so it can be picked up easily and spread on the garden. And they follow their herdsmen. They're very sweet. They're loving. They even give hugs, I've been told. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you. I can confirm that goats, yeah, they do. I don't know about hugs. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Goats are very, very social animals, and they're very happy most of the time. And my younger sister raised goats as a 4-H project and larger milking project on the farm. So I want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I've heard from a goats herdsman that they do give you hugs. You know.
Okay.
So.
All right.
There we are.
So Chicago. If anybody, you know, it's one of those things where it's that city has been engineered to the point where it's, you know, there's a whole bunch of tunnels underneath that they used to run cattle and other things and freight, that sort of thing, and then the tunnels eventually were used for other purposes by illegal activities and stuff like that. The canals,
also ran water. They ran water. They were trying to create a
there.
canal from Chicago to the Mississippi, and they dug in places where there was ground, to make like a new river. It wasn't deep, but there it was. You could run barges down that. So they ran this water under Chicago and into the canals and on its way to Mississippi. Now, they may have closed that off, but all of those deep ravines, they're still there. And you have any kind of disruption in Chicago and the locks, there must surely be locks keeping Lake Michigan water from them. The locks will break and allow this water to start rushing under Chicago. Well, you know what rushing water does. It scours. It eats away at whatever.
Well,
so it's going to...
This is fresh water, though. I mean, it's not salt water, but still, it's moving. And moving water is an incredible force, no matter what it is. I mean,
you can't
salt
stop it. You
or
won't be
fresh.
able to stop it. And Chicago will fall in on its underpinnings. It'll lose its legs. They go down. Where you put these foundings or footings, they're called, building footings, and a lot of trouble. And the Zetas are not the only one to say that Chicago will get devastated. And where's the warning? And nobody says anything because, frankly, what are you going to say to people? You're going to say, at some point, we're going to have a New Madrid adjustment, and it's going to be horrible, and it's going to wrap all the way around the Appalachians, and everybody will fall down, but we don't know when, but try not to worry. What are they going to say? Don't pay your mortgages, leave your jobs. They don't even know for sure it's going to happen. They can't say, well, who said so? The Zetas. The Zetas said so. They don't have a time frame. They don't have a valid source. And they can't even point to anything strong like they can on the West Coast. They can do some sort of stick something in the ground and say, oh, look, they do actually have fault lines moving in the West. They say, oh, look, this is 20 feet further north and this is 20 feet further south. Wow, the fault line is moving. And they can do that. They can't do that with a New Madrid, So they're stuck with their shoe in their mouth and don't know what to do.
Right, and that's where it's up to you as an individual. If you know and you trust your gut, really. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like ask yourself, does it sound right? Does it feel right where I live? Look around you, and if there's a lot of, especially around, you cross the Mississippi up and up towards the headwaters, like you said, there's a lot of rock abutments and cliffs. I mean, that's created by force. If just look at the geology, and that's which go not to harp on Chicago too much too, but if you want to, if you want to do some research at home or on the internet, just look up the topography or the geological strata of that area of the New Madrid seismic zone in the central United States, and you'll see a distinct difference between the southern portion and the northern portion of that bow. And especially around Chicago, there's softer rock and harder rock, and those two strata, when they move, one moves and liquefies, and that's what's going to happen. Is liquefaction is the shaking to the point where solids become liquid. So you can see where it's happened before and where it created, the whole Mississippi Valley, basically, in Ohio, and you can see it from a topographical map. And like I said, too, if you want to look at the geological structure, that's what the Zetas are referring to, and what you've got a lot.
Actually, I have
of
a lot of those.
A lot.
Yeah, the rock strata maps I'm
website.
going to include in my YouTube video. So as the talk progresses, so check that to get those maps of the rock strata. I have them on my website too. Yeah, absolutely. It's so logical. It makes so much sense. That's what I love about Zeta Talk. Not only is it accurate and does it play out their predictions inevitably, but it's so logical, Another thing you can do is if you feel a lot of trembling and shaking and you're getting very uneasy, if it's not the dead of winter, sleep outside. or spend a lot of time
An
out there.
open area.
Pinch your tent. Don't sleep where something's going to fall on you. It's always good advice. You can do that, I guess, in the suburbs. Oh, talking about Zeta Strata again, did we have a chance to mention the wonderful news about the humpback whales returning from extinction? Not only the humpbacks, but the green turtle is rebounding and doubling their population every few years. And also sea lions. And the reason? The oceans are rebounding in seaweed and edible vegetation, such as phytoplankton that the little shrimps, the krill, eat, and the humpback eats the krill, as do fish, and then big fish eat the little fish, and up-dee we go, right? Oh, is there any sign of that? Yes, the sargassum seaweed is being scraped off the beaches all over the world, all of a sudden, since 2015. Why is the sargassum growing like crazy? And in addition, the humpback whale has been having all their babies and rebounding since 2015. No, this is delightful. At the start of Zeta Talk 25 years ago, they said the oceans will be lush. Now, lush implies green. They didn't say the fish will rebound. The ocean fish, the fisheries will recover. They didn't say that. They said the oceans will be lush. Well, years later, in 2006, there was an experiment where people tossed iron ore dust on the ocean and found that the vegetation, such as kelp and phytoplanktons and seaweed and all this stuff, grew 20-fold increase in vegetation. So guess what has iron oxide dust? Oh, the red dust in the tail of Nibiru. Yes, the red dust that supposedly comes from the Sahara, wrapping around in odd contorted ways all the way to Texas, all the way up into Europe, wherever they have red dust that they're trying to explain. And if it's not there, like it's way up in Siberia, they say, then they say, well, maybe it's pollution. Maybe it's industrial pollution because there's red dust all over your car, or red dust on the snow up there in Siberia, But it's not. It's from Nibiru, the red skies, the blood red moon, and we're getting more and more of it. And of course, it's dropping on the oceans. Our planet is mostly oceans. So the good news is, despite being homeless, tossed out, not being able to get any oil or gas, having the grid go down, not being able to drive your car because all the bridges are down.
It's raining rough.
Yes, and having all this flooding with the sea level rising after the pole shift, just create houseboat communities. Yeah, just create houseboat communities, and with the ocean so lush, you eat like kings. Seaweed is edible, and fish, of course, are edible, and there you.
So, is there any, Nancy? Is there more explanation to what the actual nutrient factor is? Is it iron or iron oxide, or is it some sort of organic material?
No, it's just the iron. Just the iron that the oceans need and lack. And if they get it, whammo, there goes the kelp and the photoplanktons and the seaweed. And these are the great oxygenators of the ocean, of the world, by the way. It's not, people say, the rainforest and the Amazon, we're all going to die. What? No, because it is the oceans that oxygenate the planet. And now we're getting a 20-fold increase in oxygen. There we go.
That whole Amazon thing, there's more to that story. I think most of that was a setup, but I don't know.
Who knows? But don't buy into this thing about we're all going to die for lack of oxygen. And in addition to making oxygen, the oceans are going to be sucking up the CO, the carbon dioxide, because one needs the other. That's what happens. Plants put out carbon dioxide at night, and then in the day they suck it in and create oxygen instead. So we're all going to be saved.
And just think about it. What's happening is, dig through the narrative that you're being sold on the mass media, and do your own research. And it's like talk about climate change. Okay, well, there is changing of the planet. The cause of it is up for debate. One group wants to sell you something, and the other folks are telling the truth. It's when the oceans are heating up faster than the atmosphere is, there's probably something going on within the Earth, and not gases above the Earth.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, heat rises, it doesn't drop. Yeah, right.
So,
exactly.
The Zeta's been talking, and Nancy and her websites have been talking about this for many, many years. So
25 years. And look, if they wanted a cover up of Nibiru, they said, what's going to happen? These kind of things. We're going to have, weird things in the sky, and then we're going to have rising seas from heating up, of the globe, and things that they already knew because they could determine this. So then they said, okay,
you're gonna see the Planet X complex, the moons, the clouds, the tail. It will be showing up, and they can't cover it up forever, Nancy. There's some
they
brilliant
keep trying,
pictures
and
that
more
are
and more
coming
people.
out now.
Yeah, more and more people are seeing it. Yeah.
The wings, the moons, and it's like, come on, man.
Yeah, double suns, two suns, that kind of thing. And if they fall silent. How do you explain the increase in volcanoes? That's down deep in the ground. Does warmer air create, they try, and the earth wobble is so evident. They show, the sun rising to not in the right place, the sunset not in the right place. And they just stay away from that. Or there has been a few limp-wristed tries, the Arctic melted and the Antarctic didn't. So like a top out of balance, the Earth is going, wow. Oh, come on. And then how did that all happen that the Arctic melted,
Well, and then little hints are dropped, Let's talk about Greenland and see if we can buy it. That was more about, hey, think about Greenland. What's going on there? Is it,
melting.
Once the ice goes away there, there's land underneath, right? That's pretty.
It's really a delightful. If Trump gets it, it would really be a plum, because it's all fresh water. It's a huge amount of fresh water. And you know what people on the East Coast are going to be dealing with after the pole shift? Volcanic dust. Do they have an aquifer under the Appalachian? No. They do in various places, like Central Australia has an aquifer, but if you don't have an aquifer and you can't, then what are you going to do? Pull up groundwater, and you'll have to boil it and distill it and all that kind of stuff. But they could have boats coming down from Greenland delivering fresh water. Yep.
Folks, when pipes break, whether it's gas, sewer, or water, or your internet, internet's going to be gone too, kids, when there's no power. When those things break and all that mixes together, you can't trust the water coming out of the tap. So start there. You have no water.
Yeah.
Now what? That's where you should start your preparations. Don't get scared. I'm not trying to freak people out. This is not about fear. It's about motivation of facts. That it's better to be prepared before than to worry about it. I'll just go to Walmart, figure it out. Okay.
The solution is to distill your water. Getting bottled water will only last so long. And a simple distillation, you heat it, you distill. At least what you drink should be distilled, or what you make your soup out of. Gets rid of all the pollutants, all the poisons, everything. I don't care about what you take a bath in. Yeah, that's right, everything. Yeah, nasty little germs, There's a solution. There's a simple solution. Don't forget chickens and goats. Save your seed.
Grow your own food.
Learn how to save seed, guys. Yeah, I did that just yesterday. I ate a pepper, and I said, oh, look at those beautiful seeds, and scraped them off, and I'm drying them off. For heaven's sake, we throw seed out every day into the garbage, and I am just grieving over that. Don't buy shoes, save seed.
My shoes, save seed. I was just
saving.
The
ads on TV. Oh, makeup. Oh, 27 little frilly outfits. Oh, maybe I could, get another soft sheet or whatever, and And it's all about buying things and consuming and not anything about how you save yourself. And I just grieve.
I was just in the garden harvesting seeds the other day, some cilantro/coriander. Yep.
Yeah.
And
good for you.
you'd be surprised how many you get. And if you don't do it, they just fall on the ground. So that's silly.
Yeah.
Don't cry over your spilt seeds. Save your seeds.
Yes.
Right, Nancy?